Okay, welcome to another episode of Science Her Way podcast. I'm Robert Pritchett.
I'm Anna Freire.
And I'm Kelly Pritchett. Today we're excited to have Dr. Ginger Longo on the podcast. Dr. Longo is the owner of Mariposa Aesthetics here in Ellensburg. She is a board-certified OBGYN and has been practicing in and around Kittitas County for the last 15 years, and more recently in Covington. She received her medical degree from the University of Texas Medical Branch School of Medicine and has been practicing for more than 20 years. She loves using her training and professionalism in this new endeavor to help clients achieve their aesthetic goals.
So, Dr. Longo.
Hi.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in and giving us your time. We'd like our listeners to get to know you a little bit and kind of understand your journey to becoming an OBGYN and what led you into the particular field.
So I was a nurse prior to going to medical school, and I worked first in pediatrics. In my mind, I was always going to be a pediatrician, and then moved to a small town in Louisiana, and the only option was to be a labor and delivery nurse, and so kind of got thrown into that world. At the time, thought it seemed like the worst idea in the world, and then quickly fell in love with it. And so after I was a nurse for about 9 years, and then I went back to medical school during that time, had a family to raise, so that actually kept me more focused, I think, than less focused, because the earlier years I was not as focused as I should have been on school. So did great. I went into OB. Through medical school, I looked at other disciplines just because it's natural. You rotate through those clinical situations, but OB always kept calling me back. I think women's health in particular, and then just that opportunity to be part of labor and delivery and bringing babies into the world.
That's awesome.
Where did you do your undergrad studies?
San Angelo, Texas, so at Angelo State University.
Okay. So Louisiana wasn't too much of a shock.
No. Well, it was because I had never lived in a humid climate before, so I didn't know that you needed 6 showers a day to get through the day. It was
Very hot and humid, yeah. So what part of Louisiana did you say?
Down by Lake Charles.
Okay.
So way in the southwest corner.
Interesting.
Okay.
During your undergrad, you already knew that you want to do nursing or a medical-related field?
Yes, I did. I started out originally pre-med, right out of high school, and then had a lot of fun in college, and maybe needed to redirect some of my energy. So I first then transitioned to the nursing program.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. We do have a lot of students wanting to pursue medical school. Any tips on their undergraduate studies that you could provide that they could do during undergrad?
Yeah, I think the more I hear from students that rotate with me now that come through the hospital when I'm there, medical schools are enjoying a variety of undergrad studies, and I think it helps get a broader base of people that have better backgrounds, different experiences. So really the main thing is getting those experiences in the medical field somehow, maybe outside of your studies. So the sciences certainly are helpful, and you really need that basic science understanding, but I think humanities bring a lot to the profession too, if you study those. There were 3 nurses in my medical school class that had gone back, and many other people that had had different pathways in medicine in some form or another. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's very interesting, because I think a lot of the times students come in, they think, I want to go to medical school, and they go straight into the sciences and they do the hard sciences, and often it loses.
Yes.
They get lost.
I think so, or they get discouraged because they are so hard.
Discouraged,
so you don't
yes.
even really know how to study yet, and you go to organic chemistry your first quarter and you give up because you think that you're not smart enough, and everyone has the ability. It's just learning how to get there.
For sure. That's great
Exactly.
information.
Awesome. And how have you seen the landscape change over the years, and what unique perspectives do you think women bring to the field of women's health?
I think I was fortunate. I probably entered a time when our medical school class was 50-50. And so we were a little bit heavier women, maybe like 51%. So I entered a time when it was just very normal for women and men to both be there. So I know early on, especially in residency, it was a little more difficult to have a family because you still were expected to act like you didn't and just show up. And that's part of that is important. You have to be there to learn, and so you have to make some sacrifices back and forth. So I think I may not have as much insight in how the field's changed. And then I went into a really heavily woman-predominated field too. So I think for our profession, it's the men that feel a little left out for the most part now. But then my spouse at the time is orthopedic, and so it was definitely his was the complete opposite, right? You know, there maybe were 2 female residents in his program, and so I've seen that change over the years, and I do believe we're becoming pretty equal in a lot of the fields, which is nice.
Cool.
Interesting. And you have a unique perspective because Ellensburg is a smaller community, right? So it could be quite different in a clinical perspective. So how does practicing medicine in this setting differ for larger cities, for example?
So, and it's kind of fun to answer that question because I've done both back and forth a lot. So practicing, especially OB in particular here, is a little more difficult because you're one of very few providers, but you're always on. You're always on call, and you need to be. And that's part of the reason you go into that profession is to be available. But it is harder. It was harder for me to do that for more than a couple of years at a time without needing a break where I felt more supported. And so when I go to the West Side, quote unquote, and I work at Valley and Renton as a laborist. So I go and do a shift there, much like a fireman is what I tell patients. We're there for 24 hours. I'm delivering for a group of 13 who need us to be the relief for their call. And so it's very different to go over there and have just a larger pool of practitioners to pull from, more resources, higher level of some of the services for patients. It's great. It's a nice, both are very good and both have their pros and cons, I would say. But this is, rural health in general is really a challenge, and it's getting to be more so since COVID, and having practitioners here has been tricky. And I think they're doing great now. We have some really good providers here, and they've built up that pool.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so you also are a mom of 4, correct?
4 girls.
So can you talk about maintaining a professional career while also being a mom? I think that a lot of us as women, see that as a challenge, but any tips on how you manage that?
I don't know. Yes. It depends on the day and what you ask me. Now that they're grown, I feel much better about it, but I'm sure we should have them in here to ask them about it.
I feel the same way.
Every day is hard. But I felt, I think especially probably all parents, but I only know the mom's perspective. We carry a lot of guilt about what we do or don't do, no matter how things turn out. And I don't think, and my girls and I will talk about this at times too, I don't really have any regrets. It could have been completely different, and I was there, and I would regret not being at work. So I think that it's just coming to terms with what you decide to do and looking for the positives. I always felt like I was being a good role model for them, I hope. Interestingly, I have no children that went into medicine, and they aren't interested in it. But I do have one that has 3 children that stays at home with them and is enjoying that. I have another one that's following a career in another state. So my favorite thing is that they all feel very compelled to do what calls them, and that's what I think I wanted them to learn from me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I think that if you follow your passion, it probably doesn't feel like work, and that's really a big lesson I think that we can all teach our kids.
Yeah. And they wouldn't know different. I try to remind myself of that, like that was their normal.
Yeah.
So it's to them, Mom went to work a lot. So that's cool. They do. Actually, they will complain sometimes about that. But that's what children do.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. So now I want to shift gears, and I want to talk about your latest venture, the Mariposa Med Spa, and how does it tie into your work as an OBGYN? Maybe what inspired you to open Mariposa?
It. Sure.
Yeah.
It's a long, wordy story, so
you
get tired, just raise your hand and say that's enough. So it really was because I had started doing the laborist work where I worked just 7 shifts a month, and I had free time, and I don't think until I had free time I realized how I don't really know what to do with my free time. So I had friends, true story, we were having wine one night at Bricks, and they were all complaining about having to drive to get their Botox out of town. I said, I can do that. We did that in residency, and so I just kind of looked into how to do it for friends only. But it turned out you can't just order it delivered to your house. You have to have an actual physical location, and so I rented the space downtown just to have a room and a space, and it just has naturally grown. It's been a really great experience, and I think I'm very grateful for that because it's a small town, word of mouth gets around, and we just kept growing. And once you start doing things like Botox, and people want to know about skincare, and so it was really fun to grow into that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Ellensburg was definitely lacking those types of treatments, and so it's nice to see that we have that available. And so now, what are some of the more common concerns that patients come to see you for at the spa?
So we've switched gears a little bit over the last 2 years, and that again was almost accidental. It was a patient who was really interested in the new weight loss meds that weren't really new, but were getting a lot of airplay, like Ozempic and Wegovy. And she was asking me to prescribe it, but her insurance wouldn't cover it, and then I didn't have any experience with it. So it prompted me to look into those medications more, and then learn more about compounding pharmacies, and then again, word of mouth, and just kind of naturally grew a service that we didn't really expect to grow, but we're really enjoying. And so we have what we call weight management, we really see as wellness. And so we're really, I was kind of mentioning before, I'm really trying to separate the two service lines, because we don't want patients to get the idea that because we have aesthetic in our name that we think that anything that we offer through wellness is about how they look. I mean, certainly being comfortable with how you look and being comfortable with who you are has a huge impact on people's mental health, and we don't take that lightly. And that's part of the reason that I think I'm enjoying the aesthetics, is we have a big impact in some really small ways sometimes.
Right.
But the wellness part, I really, it's prompted me to do some more education. I just this last year did a fellowship in obesity medicine and got board certified in that. And I'd like to look into more functional medicine, and I really see that as where I would want my career to go, and I think it's where patients are really wanting to have that support. So I hope we grow 2 different service lines and maybe do 2 different locations if we can. So
That's great.
You might have already answered this, but obviously women's health is constantly an evolving field.
Yes.
Are there any recent developments or treatments that you are particularly excited about?
Yes, I'm trying to think of where I'm excited and where I'm practicing. Yes, there's a lot of other great things even just coming, I think, down the pipeline, and how we do hospital care and systems that are being built around that, which is great. Me personally, I'm really excited about the new medications that are out, the GLP-1 medications. They're really looking promising, in particular for women's health, around things like PCOS and infertility, and some things that we haven't had good treatments for. I think what the medications are underlying is that our most common chronic diseases all really have a common core, and we're getting that information kind of backwards from the meds, because we're seeing how they affect so many different disease processes. And so I'm excited to see where that goes, and that is definitely, the research is going on, and it's still out, and so I'm always careful when I counsel patients about these are the things we know the meds are made for right now, which is diabetes and weight loss and prevention of heart disease in a certain population. But the ongoing studies really show them helping us heal a lot of these metabolic disorders, like PCOS for women, which can lead to infertility. Kidney disease looks like it's getting a pretty good improvement. I always feel like when I talk about these meds that the guy from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the dad, do you remember how he had Windex, and he sprayed Windex on everything? So I'm always like, oh, it'll fix that, and it'll fix that. But I think it fixes a lot of the complaints that we see that are chronic conditions that are directly related to diet and exercise, and these help people get into that space in many instances.
So I have a very sort of naive understanding of these meds, but my understanding is that they help reduce weight. How much of that reduction in weight, or what percentage of your clients after losing weight maintain the new set weight through physical activity or a healthier lifestyle? Or is that promoted? Do you promote that?
Absolutely, yes. So I always refer back to the study that we have from the first for semaglutide, which is Ozempic and Wegovy. 4 years after that study, particularly about weight, ended, the people that maintained the weight loss either stayed on the medication on a maintenance dose, or if they came off the medication, they increased their activity, almost doubling what they were doing on the meds. So
Interesting.
really the only way it looked like that you maintain weight loss, and I don't think it's unique to this med. I think, and that's where we get the media play, like, oh, you'll just go off it and gain the weight. Well, yeah, every diet that you do, if you change that habit.
Yeah.
But exercise is key in maintaining it and more vigorous. And so we, from the beginning, and this is where I think that's where I'm proud of our program, and it's always been our goal. The minute people start the med, we're talking about what does the end look like? Are you going to be on this forever? Because for some people, the loss of food chatter in their brain is so nice. They don't want to go off. I think there's ways that you can accomplish that, but maybe genetically that's hard without the med. We talk about exercise. We talk about intake. We're very careful. We're not nutritionists, so we recommend the things that we can read and say, but we have a dietitian that we consult for that. But really what we find is there's about it's kind of the same rule of thirds that's always in medicine, but a third of people stay on the med forever or want to. It's only 2 years in, so this is early. A third will go off and maintain the weight loss, and a third will regain because they won't be able to make those changes without the med.
So the third that's maintaining is going off into an activity program, whether it's using a personal trainer, going off into the gym. So improving or maintaining
What they were
lean tissue.
Yes, and really it is building. And we watch their muscle mass as best we can with a scale it's an InBody scale. We talk about protein intake. We talk about strength training. I get excited about that for my female patients because that's where I've always, especially the perimenopausal, postmenopausal women, I feel like I finally have a tool. It's such a great tool to get them excited about getting healthy because it's hard to get excited when you fail, and that's how our diets have been traditionally. So.
So do you think the health benefits are due to improving or increasing lean muscle mass versus the medication itself?
I think we're going to find out it's something with the medication, because I will have a patient 4 weeks in who has no further knee pain, who starts moving long before the weight loss. So I think it's such an anti-inflammatory response. And I honestly think a lot of weight gain, the weight that people lose, is inflammation response. It's an inflammatory response. So sometimes they think about gut health, which no one wants to talk about, but that's what we have to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
These peptides come from our gut naturally. We're not having healthy guts for many different reasons. And so if we help, that's a big part of our program, is helping them heal their gut health, which is tricky because finding the exact science that tells us how to do that is sometimes hard. But we have some better data, I think, lately. But we talk, if you heal that inflammation, you lose weight, your liver gets better, your kidneys get better, your insulin resistance goes down. So I almost see the weight that we can't lose as another sign of inflammation more than the cause. And if we tell people that, they feel better about themselves. Because we've told them in medicine for years, this is where I'm really happy to be kind of free to do new things, is, they come in and they're miserable, and I would say, well, eat less and move more. But we didn't give them tools, and maybe we're blaming them for something that wasn't their fault.
Right.
And then they felt bad about themselves. They wouldn't come get health care, and it's just been this vicious cycle. So it's been, I will tell you, the people that have joined our clinic, and we're small, but the practitioners have never had this much reward at work before, because people they're hopeful, they're happy, and it quickly moves away from weight and the scale and becomes more about wellness for patients. Yeah, it's really cool.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the food chatter, and I've worked a lot with clients from a nutrition perspective. Weight management was always something that I kind of cringe, and like now I'm only dealing with sports. But I have heard, just like anecdotally from a lot of folks who have used a GLP-1, that it really does change the things that they're craving. And so I find that really fascinating, that maybe there's some rewiring going on with the brain, or is it the gut that's responsible for that?
Well, it looks like it. Yeah, so that signal definitely starts in the gut, but then it affects the pathways in the brain, the neuropeptides that drive us to want to eat. Okay. And so that signal that goes back, the balance between leptin and ghrelin, and am I hungry, am I not hungry, and all of those things are really, they're biochemical reactions that we've given a moral grade to. And we've
Right.
said, if you can't avoid that, there's something wrong with you when you're
Or
just getting the
control
signal.
it, yeah.
And if you have an itch, you scratch it. And so that constant input that you're hungry. And if you
Yeah.
think the best thing one of the lectures I love the best in the obesity training was, we're always having a hunger signal. That's how we survive. You have to have that pathway telling you to eat, because when you're a baby, you
Right.
need to have that. And then you need the pathway that says, okay, I'm full, I'm satisfied. And that's what this peptide seems to really impact, is people get full faster. So we don't, the other thing that I think is important if you're on these meds is you have to use them to be able to get nutrition in. It's
Right.
not a starvation diet. It's not you're so shut down that you don't eat for the whole day. It's okay, now you can control that food chatter. And then we give resources on like nutritionally dense food that you tell people, I think anyway, on diets is what can you get in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if we back up? I think a lot of
Sure.
our listeners maybe are students. And so from a mechanistic standpoint, can you explain how these GLP-1s work?
Yes.
And then also, I think that this is not something that's new,
No.
right?
Since 2005 was the very first one that was FDA approved.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's more on the market. So I'm going to stick to GLP-1 because that's
Okay.
Ozempic and Wegovy. But prior to Ozempic and Wegovy, there were other forms. Liraglutide was the most recent prior to that. So they're all GLP-1 receptor agonist. A GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptide 1, so it acts on that receptor. The medicine, so the difference is in the gut and nature. When you eat a meal, if you have healthy bacteria that support the promotion of these peptides, you eat, that peptide sends a signal to the brain that says, I've eaten, I'm satisfied, you don't need anything else. So that somehow cuts carb cravings. I'm not exactly sure how, but I think it has to do with that satisfaction. And it's also tied to the type of bacteria you have in your gut as well, I think, for whether you want carbs or not. But a big proponent of, I should say more like sugar, a big part of these medications is people tend to crave sugar less, and they tend to crave, they actually, I'll have patients say, oh, I wanted a green bean today, who am I? Because they've never in their whole life wanted a vegetable, and now they have these cravings, which I find fascinating with the gut health. But so that signal goes to the brain, but also they affect insulin production and insulin sensitivity. Yep. And so you get, I always tell patients it's both things. It's the thing you enjoy, and then it's the thing your body enjoys, because that insulin is now more efficient. It can move into the cells better, and I think it's that the peptides, one of the theories is there's less inflammation at the cellular level, so the receptors work better to move glucose across the cell membrane.
So, I mean, if you're getting more glucose across the cell membrane, that's a signal to say that, hey, I'm fuller, my energy storage is topped up, and I feel better.
Yeah, so I think it's everything combined. That's why I think.
And then if you couple that with exercise, I'm a big proponent of lean muscle
Yes,
tissue.
that's true.
If you couple that with exercise and you build some lean tissue, then all those receptors are being woken up by increase in activity, increase in lean tissue mass, and it's a compounding positive effect.
Yeah. It's
Fantastic.
It's so great. Yeah. That's why I'm glad you're talking to me. My family's tired of hearing me talk about it, because I think it's such a good thing and a good tool, and it's just going to be battling misconceptions. It's going to be now battling people that want to make money off of products that now the foods have little stickers that say GLP-1 friendly when they could be anything but that. They're just
my gosh,
garbage. But they can put that on there, and no one knows it's like gluten-free things that are already gluten-free. So I know
that's crazy. Well, and I think another common misconception is we don't know much about it. Yeah, but we actually do, right? Yes. Because individuals with type 2 diabetes they've been on it for a long time, right? Yeah. And they noticed they were losing weight.
That's where it all kind of came up. Yeah. So I think the peptides, they've known the peptides existed in nature since the early 1900s. I think it depends on what I Google. But being able to synthesize something that acted like the peptide was not until, I think, in the late 80s maybe, and then released in 2005. So good data. Side effects short term are the things that we also feel like is important to support patients with. They're usually GI related, like nausea, constipation, or loose stools. And then Fatigue is a big part of it, and it's usually if they're not getting enough in, or they're kind of switching how their metabolism works, and they feel pretty run down. But that's usually pretty self-limited. We just help support through that with sometimes electrolytes in the water and things, and then heartburn occasionally, because people will. So this is one of the really cool areas of research. But alcohol use is still possible in the meds, but most people find they don't want it, or they will drink half a drink and forget about it, or they'll drink 2 drinks and be done. And so the research going into substance use disorders, both with alcohol and opioids, is really exploding and looking promising. And we have over and over our patients, especially those that are, maybe they're social drinkers, but they think they're drinking a little more than they should, but they don't really feel that need to quit. But they know it'll benefit their health. They really like the effects of the decreased alcohol.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. So I was going off on a tangent about heartburn.
That's
fine. I was going to say heartburn is a problem, but it's usually people that keep doing the things like alcohol or processed foods or things that typically make you not feel great on the meds. It really, those are, if you avoid those, you usually feel pretty good.
Well, over the past few years, although it's not a new medication, there's been a lot of increase in interest, right, on this drug. But it's important, I think, to highlight that it should be properly prescribed, right? It's not for everyone. It's not something that we should take lightly, right? So any advices or profiles of people that would benefit from it or people who would not benefit from it?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So we instead of going by BMI, we go more by body fat percent when we decide whether a patient's a candidate. I will say, and so first of all, if it's for weight loss, it should be for a healthy weight loss. It shouldn't be, and we don't really have as much interest in not being healthy that I would have expected.
Okay.
I think we really have patients that are coming and they're just saying, this isn't me. I'm 20 pounds overweight. I can't get this off. This is where I have some freedoms because we are a cash-based program that I wouldn't have if we were in a clinic setting where insurance was how people were paying. Because the insurance right now won't always cover it, and when they do, it's with a BMI that is over 30 or BMI over 27 with 2 comorbidities, so something like heart disease or diabetes. So insurance might cover it then because that's the FDA approved. We can still use meds off label even if they're not, if they're FDA approved, and I could say, I know this is still a safe med and I want to use it for this indication. But insurance rarely covers those indications, especially on something expensive. And the brand names of these medications are $1,500 to $1,800 a month. And so we are using compounded forms, which this is such a long story, so if this needs to be cut, let me know. But okay. So the brand name medications are protected by a patent right now. They can't be made into generic for about 8 more years. So when you think about ibuprofen over the counter, it was Advil for many years before it was even a prescription for a while. So those natural progression would be 8 years, and then you get your generic form. When medications are in short supply, the FDA says that compounding pharmacies can make a generic copy. It can't be exact. It can be within like 0.01% exact of the molecule of the brand name.
Okay.
And so those meds have been in short supply for about 1.5 years now because they're popular, they're effective, people want them. So we can use a compounding pharmacy to source the medications. I've learned all this in the last 2 years. I just want you to know. And to use those pharmacies, you have to be careful because it's an easy molecule to make. I always joke you can make meth in your garage. You can probably make semaglutide in your garage too. So we don't want that.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would only use a compounding pharmacy that is a 503B currently. They have FDA oversight, and they have the ones that we have 2 that we source from. They have a third-party tester that says, yes, what's in the vial is in the vial, and it's sterile because they're injectable. I didn't say that, but it's a once-a-week injection. And so those have been some hoops to jump through. The FDA and the parent companies that make the brand names and the compounding pharmacies are always in this battle. It's all money, and I shouldn't say all money. I don't want to say that and then get in trouble. I'm sure everyone has everyone's best interest at heart. But there's a lot of financial gain for the brand names to not let us have access to the compounding drugs. The reason the compounding are important right now is I could prescribe it to you. I could say, hey, here's a prescription for Ozempic. that it would cost you $1,800 a month. If I can use the compounded form, then that will cost anywhere from $200 to $400.
Wow.
Still not a cheap medication, and I think because we've lost sight of what inexpensive
Yes.
is,
Mhm.
that seems
Right.
inexpensive. It's not, and so we work with our patients, one, to stay on the lowest dose possible, and then to do the other things to lose weight. So
Mhm.
it kind of works well for wellness because we have that time to spend with them, and they are investing their own time and money, and so they really are motivated.
Mhm.
To use it.
And is that a profile of patients that would not be
sorry,
advised
I
to
got
take it?
way
Yeah.
off
No,
subject.
don't
Yeah.
worry about it. Yeah.
So for as far as when we decide who's going to take the medication, if it's for weight loss alone, then it would not be lower than a healthy body fat percent for women and men. And we always aim for somewhere between 20 and 30. If they're really lean and they're losing quick and we're worried about other health things, we would say no, no, we're good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We actually don't really have that, which is really nice. I haven't
Interesting.
had, I know it's,
So you haven't had to turn anyone away.
there's been a couple of people I've talked into other alternative things because I
Okay.
felt like, one, financially it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And two, I think they maybe had a different understanding about what the med could do for
Mhm.
them, but not.
And do
Yeah.
you know if is it being misused in
Oh,
other situations by?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure it is. And I
Mhm.
think that online people can get it and there's not a lot of accountability. So I could go on and put in any
That's
weight
crazy.
and get a prescription pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
So there was I will promise I'll get back to the people that take it because there's another interesting thing about that. So the other people that are taking the med through our clinic are people that maybe have chronic inflammatory things. So I have
Okay.
a lot of patients who have rheumatoid arthritis who are doing amazing. This is a disclaimer. There's studies going on, and I can't say it's been studied for that, but with our patient population,
Uh-huh.
I've had patients who are not needing their anti-inflammatory meds anymore. Their rheumatologists are referring them to say, give it a try. It's low risk.
Yeah.
So as far as we know, long-term data, there don't seem to be any increased risk. There's a few people there was a worry about maybe a risk of thyroid cancer, medullary thyroid cancer, because a study in rats showed an increase in that. We're not seeing that globally, and now this is the most widely used medication, and it's been around for long enough that if that was going to be what it caused, we should see an uptick in those numbers, and that's not happening. But I wouldn't give it to someone with a history of that cancer, or a family history even. I think I might be very cautious until we get complete FDA release to say, no, it's not a risk, because it still carries a black box warning for that.
So is the dose reduced if you are prescribing it for inflammation versus
Yes.
weight control? There's a
Yeah.
a dose response for
Yeah, because
dependent upon.
especially a lot of those patients don't need to lose weight.
Sure.
My daughter's a great example. She doesn't need to lose weight. I wouldn't want her to lose weight. She's pretty slight already, and she has rheumatoid arthritis and is on the 0.25 dose and is doing great, just no pain. And then she frequently, if she misses a dose, it's not uncommon, or just it says this week I'm fine. Her pain will come back. So
Wow.
it's pretty cool, and we see that over and over with rheumatoid migraine headaches. We've had some patients. So again, we're very clear when people have something that seems maybe to have an inflammatory process. If they want to try it and there's nothing in their health history that would prevent that, we say, let's see what happens. I don't ever make claims about the med, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
There was a really great study about improvement in osteoarthritis last fall, and that it kind of went away, and I was expecting maybe FDA approval for osteo, but it didn't come out. And then sleep apnea as well. There was a great study showing improvement in sleep apnea. And these things happen before the weight loss happens. That's what fascinates me.
That's
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah, it's really
Interesting.
cool.
And do you see changes in inflammatory biomarkers?
Yeah, well, we do. So we aren't running. We're going to start doing that. That's kind
Yeah.
of part of our new movement into more functional medicine.
Okay.
But we see great improvements in hemoglobin A1C, sometimes within that first 4 months when you can really follow up and check. I have 2 patients in my clinic that are diabetic that insurance won't cover it, so they're paying out of pocket, and they're coming off their insulin.
Wow.
Which isn't really an inflammatory marker, but it is in a way to me.
Yeah.
It's great. But yeah, we should see those things should get better. So we'll start
Okay.
checking some SED rates and C-reactive proteins and all the things
Okay,
we're not
yeah.
following. Yeah.
Wow, awesome.
It's really interesting.
Well, and I think you've just shared a lot of the stories that have been wins. Is there anything else that you see with clients? Like, I think of someone who maybe wants to start an exercise program, but they're not able to because they're uncomfortable. And so I really feel like this could be a catapult for those individuals who want to get active. They want to play tennis or they want to do something that they used to do.
It is good. Yeah. We see that. We partner with Garage Studio Fitness, so we have 3 classes that our clients can use. And it's nice because they're all timid. I mean, like going in there the first time, I felt comfortable
Yeah.
too. And so it helps to have, I think, a place that we can say this is your spot. And then what we find a lot is because we stay low doses and people usually will start to lose, but they'll hit plateaus. We're going to hit plateaus again with any weight loss. We prepare them ahead of time. If you hit a plateau, we're not going to say, let's up the dose necessarily. We're going to say, hey, what are you doing to move? And that they want to do that. And it's that natural. We've already prepared them at the beginning. When you hit a plateau, we have a little paper that says we're going to ask you how much water you're getting, if you're getting enough nutrition in. If they're not eating enough, their weight loss slows. And then if they're moving. So, but we do see people that I think, especially the people that have really bad joint pain that couldn't move and then they feel better, they are out moving more and more. So. Yeah, and I will say not everyone responds the same. There's people that lose weight quickly. There's people that lose 1 pound a week, and we try to remind them not to be disappointed. That's actually our goal because that's a good amount of weight loss. Some people lose 1 pound a month, but if we do the body scale, a lot of times they've gained muscle and they've lost body fat. We do measurements, and they'll lose around the waist. I think that we really want to just reframe how they see success and get it back to health and not the number on this scale. And then a few people, the side effects can be tricky, and they really require not wanting those things that are going to make you feel bad and not eating them anyway. And so we've had a few people, I think, that just felt like giving those things up, even if they weren't having the food noise, wasn't worth being on the meds. So it's very rare that patients don't stay with us or be successful.
That's great. I could keep asking
I know. I feel like it's all just so great.
Yeah.
It really is.
And
like, it's really, really fun.
I mean, and I think for those that do lose weight quickly, and I think you've mentioned this already, but you're really stressing the importance of making sure you're getting enough protein, but also resistance training, because with weight loss, there's going to be some loss of lean tissue. So I don't really know what my question is, but
no, but it's a good reinforcement because we say that, and we have had people that were losing too quick, and we back their dose off.
Okay,
and they're usually happy to. People are so concerned about losing muscle because of I'm glad the media has made a big deal about that.
That's
and
good.
so they like to see that number, and they don't want that to happen. So I think the biggest thing out of all of this, that it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is really simple, and we've made it a lot harder than it is when it comes to being healthy in many ways, is that these peptides, there's a Colleen Cutcliffe. Have you seen her before? Does that ring a bell? She's
a physician from Stanford. Yeah, I think I saw her page. Yeah,
so she's started a company called Pendulum, and they make the probiotics that Akkermansia is the species that supports the production of these peptides in our gut. And so I think that's where a lot of us in medicine have not been as good at promoting gut health as we should have been, because we just didn't have the data to say, oh, yeah, because we didn't know. No one knows. What are the bacteria that make us healthy? We know the ones that might make us not healthy, but really what is a healthy mix? And so there's more and more data every year, it seems like, and she's a big pioneer in that, and DNA sequencing for specific bacteria associated with either obesity or with just unhealthy factors like diabetes or heart disease. And so I think listening to her and listening to her explain, one, we do, even if we don't know for sure, we still need a healthy gut. Like we can still replace Akkermansia. There are some other strains that we do know are important. And then that how we have not kept them healthy is how we've been industrialized. And so if we it's always been hard for me to talk to patients about, oh, you should really not do that because it's not good for you, but except the big things, I guess. But it's like, oh yeah, have an Oreo, whatever. Try to eat healthy. But in some sense, if we had a healthy gut, we could have Oreo every now and then, but we are so far away from that point.
Yeah.
And so we do talk a lot about, please, try to make your diet as whole and as whole foods and as less processed as possible. And this is why we think it's important. And this is why if we can help heal your gut, you won't maybe need these meds forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So-
I don't know where, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
how do you determine gut health? Are you taking a stool sample or?
Well, we're not yet, but
Okay.
I'm interested. So that's part of where I would like to do more study and more education.
Yeah.
There are lots of companies now, again, because it becomes a buzzword and then it's a business, and that's
Yes.
okay. But there are some really good areas of research going. Like I really admire Dr. Cutliff. I thought that was great. I think, but there is a lot of Cinder stool, and we'll tell you what your gut looks like.
Yeah.
I think that might end up being eventually a really good thing, and I just don't even know if I know the companies that are reputable right now.
Right. You're just kind of advising people
Yeah.
to try and clean up their diet
Yes.
more.
Right.
Yeah. Another big area of medicine or where things are moving is more genetic-based recommendations, which
Yeah.
I'm really interested in.
Mhm.
So I think that I would like to learn more about too, and maybe do some studies. But I think that will go hand in hand with stool studies when we have better DNA analysis
Yeah.
of the bacteria. There's it's a Netflix plug, but there's a really fascinating Netflix special called How to Hack Your Gut Health. Have you seen
Okay.
that one?
Oh, interesting.
It's really good because it does link to a few researchers that I would like to follow more and be in touch with, and they're more in that realm of figuring out what really it is that makes a healthy gut. And it needs to be diverse, and we know that. But we don't, everything's, if it's processed and it's overwashed, you're not getting exposure to the good bacteria anyway, and then we're not feeding them. I didn't know what a prebiotic was until last year.
Well, and I think it is such a buzzword, and then I often have clients asking me, "Do I need a probiotic?" But I do think that's a hard thing to know because
Yeah.
I do not know
Which one to recommend?
what your gut bacteria is like, and if I recommend this probiotic, I mean there are a few, like for example, if you're on an antibiotic, we know that you need the S. boulardii strain or whatever, but there's no way of going in and
saying I know which one you need.
But what we do know is that if you eat your fermented foods and you have a balance of pre and probiotics in your diet, that's going to support a healthy gut. So I do think that we know that, but it is an exciting area of research to follow. And I agree with you. It's an area I want more education as well.
Do you feel like during med school and other healthcare careers studies, do you feel that that's addressed? Like, no, right?
Not at all. And it's nice that's being addressed now. The fact that we, and I think, I mean, the majority of people I'm around that are colleagues, we're all getting really more aware of what knowledge we don't have. Because just like you said, like, you need this with an antibiotic. I'm like, no, we don't. We just write the script and send people out and say, good luck. Like I've done that for 20 years, and that I don't want to do that anymore. And then we also, you don't learn it in medical school. You don't have time after medical school to learn anything new.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I was fortunate to have time to explore some of this, but if you're busy, and then there's confirmation bias, right? Like I think I know what I know, and I want to make sure I keep knowing it. Yeah, I'm like, and so we just have gotten to a point where I think providers are getting fed up. I don't want a 15-minute visit with anyone anymore. I want to be able to spend time, and I have that luxury now, and I want to get to know who they are and what things might be impacting their health, and then want to have time to learn how to help them and how to enlist other people that know things that we're not even asking.
I think that's so important. We talked about active listening all the time with our students that will be healthcare professionals. What do you feel that are like the most important skills that a future healthcare provider should have to work on this field? What do they need? What skills should they be working on?
To work in medicine in general? Or
really,
it's all of it.
I think
field,
all of it in general, but specifically this field, because it's so, I feel that it's new, right? What's your advice?
So I think it's that active listening for sure. One of my colleagues and I were talking over in Renton that it's so hard to teach them the things you want them to learn, right? Like you want empathy and you want curiosity and you want some of the innate qualities that make them want to help people. Like people, you can want to help someone, but you have to have some education about what that means. Some people, I think it's more natural, but if you really want to have an impact on patients' lives, you have to be able to sit and learn who they are and not make assumptions. And I think that is the biggest thing. And when you're overweight and you show up to an office, someone's made a lot of assumptions already about you, and it's disheartening. And so then we do it all the time. The stories I hear from patients, and I'm sure patients of mine maybe told stories after they saw me. I hope not. But the things that they are told by a provider is really disheartening for me. So anyone going into this field, first I would say never say something hurtful, never make an assumption about a patient, and to, sit and get to know them and ask them what their struggles are, and then you can help them. There's a great book called Mountains Beyond Mountains that Paul Farmer wrote. I think anybody going into medicine should read it. It's really good. And he lives what he says in that book, and he gets to know people and goes way beyond anything that I've been doing in my clinic.
I love that. I mean, I do think it's such a good skill to have in any health field, health-related field, is just being able to listen to our clients. And one thing that, I don't know if you realized it, but one thing that stands out to me throughout this interview is that you're still continuing to learn. And so you're not stagnant in your career. And I love that. I aspire to be that way and to constantly be learning. So, I think a lot of people just stop and do the bare minimum. And I just think it's so great.
Well, thank you. I love it. It's really fun. Yeah. And it's so much fun to go back and learn things that I learned 20 years ago, and then they finally make sense.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why I needed to know that pathway.
Right.
You should all go back and redo it.
Cycle. I know. Yeah.
Yep.
So those things are important.
Definitely.
I think, but it is fun. And it's fun if you feel like you're making a difference too. And I think
I
that
agree.
I really am sad none of my children went into medicine, and I don't want to encourage or discourage anyone from going. That's the wrong word. But I think if you're going into it, you have to have an intention of it's easy to get in that little channel of, this is med school, these are the things you learn, this is how you prescribe this is always going to work. And you have to have that ability to see it for what it is and utilize it as a tool, and then learn from the people that are around you, learn from your professors.
But the thing is, when you're in the trenches, it's very difficult to see out. And, medical school is so cutthroat, I'm sure, not that I've been to medical school, that they just want to get their grades, they want to get out, and it's so difficult to see. It's only when you reflect later on, and I think we have that as faculty members, we reflect on things that we've learned, and then they suddenly all start to make sense as you're teaching a new group. So it's very difficult to see out of the trenches, but
it is, and you have to get through it. It's
you have to get through it. But it'd be so nice to have a broader perspective of what you're learning lots of the time.
Yeah. I hope it's changing. There's a lot of chatter about how education is right now, or what's lacking in it, and especially when it comes, we're not doing prevention. Yeah, and we have to. And now I think that we have a tool that's successful. It's really going to be hard to say it just won't work, right? You can talk about diet and exercise, but that's not going to work. Well, it's going to work now because we have a way.
So you juggle a lot, being OBGYN, running a med spa, and so much more. So how does a typical day looks like for you? So future students that are preparing for maybe a healthcare career in medicine, how is a usual day for you?
Day?
Yeah.
Should do before the spa and after. Because then they won't want to go. Before it was much less predictable. So I would say anyone going into a career like OB or general surgery, or where you have a call part of your career where you are you're just never sure what your day is going to hold, you need to be very easygoing and flexible about that. And you don't have to be, but you will not be happy if you're not, because you won't have control that you would like to have. Yeah. And I hope most places are talking to students as they go through about that when they're picking their career. Now I really love, that's the benefit for me having this business, is it's busy and there's a lot in my brain to keep up with, but I set my schedule, and so I can get up every morning, go to the gym. I decide when I see my first patient. I have time to get some things done. And just getting older, I have to do those things for my own health, and I can't preach health to my clients if I'm not doing it myself. So I'm trying my new, because it's time for resolutions. My new one is just to set more time in the morning where I actually don't do anything with the business. I don't look at emails. I don't answer text, and I have some, besides the workout, then I have maybe some mindfulness or something quiet
Yeah.
And then my day it's probably a lot different than it was before. I see our patient visits are anywhere from half an hour if they're a follow-up to an hour long.
Oh,
The aesthetic is different. That's a half hour. Those are more fun and easier and lighthearted. But the wellness is really, it goes kind of by what patients need, which is great.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's good.
Well, okay, so I know we've got a few more minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time, but what are you mentioned wanting to kind of split aesthetics and wellness, and so can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I think it's like that idea that something's forming, but we don't have all the details yet. But the direction I would like to see it is to be two separate entities. They both have good services and offer things that I think are important and valuable to the community. But for me personally, I would like the wellness to be more opening or more welcoming to our male patients. A lot of them are reluctant to come in. So even though I'm OB, I treat male in the wellness clinic. And then I would just like to keep doing education around how to provide more longevity. I don't really like the word longevity. More wellness medicine, more health span, more what are the things that we can do to prevent disease and then to just live longer and more mobile lives. So that's where
Great.
I want to go.
And what would be the advice for everyone wanting to go into a health or self-care journey, weight loss? What would be your big advice?
I think probably find that support where you are. So we love our support. I think if you found a clinic or a provider that models all the aspects of support, not just, you can't just go to the gym alone and not incorporate a lot of these things. You can't just go get your medication and not incorporate them. You can, but you won't be getting the best out of it or the most health. So look for something that is a whole system and then do it slowly. So we do definitely from the very the very first visit, we say this month is going to be how you feel about the meds and how you feel on the meds. Next month, we're going to talk about how to optimize what you're getting in and then how to add activity. But it should be step by step, and you should be kind to yourself when you're doing it.
Yeah.
If one day is not good, the next day might be better.
It's so refreshing to hear that, because after going to so many providers that we have a 5-minute talk and that's just what it is. And so it's really refreshing to see that perspective.
I think people tend to look at a day-to-day response versus a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day response. That's the time to reflect after you've had 30 days or 60 days to look back and think, well, how have I done? And look where I've come from versus, I don't feel so good today. Yeah.
Doesn't mean the whole thing's
agree.
crap.
Exactly.
I want to say one thing about the providers that have 15-minute appointments. They don't want those either.
Yeah.
Everyone's frustrated. That's the system. And I feel so bad when people go in and they say, oh, I'm here for my blood pressure and I have something here, but they won't look at that and you have to come back. That isn't a provider's wish to do that. Yeah. And so it is a system I hope is getting fixed as well.
I hope so too. Gosh. So what's one thing you'd like every woman or man, because you do see males, to know about their health or self-care? It's a loaded question.
It is. I know there's a lot of things. One, I think, is that they have more control than they think they do, and that it isn't going to be better next year. So do it now. And I think that was easy as you get older. So I feel like the younger people, especially, when they come in, I'm so happy. Like, you're impacting your life so much more than I did. I got started late. I didn't manage stress early on. And so I think that's maybe the thing you need to know is that the sooner you start, the longer you're going to have a healthier life, which seems...
I heard something the other day, and someone said to me, they said the best time to plant a tree was yesterday. So it really resonated with me. It's never too late to start today, because
it's not going to get better.
It's not going to get better. Yeah.
When I couldn't get up off the floor playing with my grandkids, I was like, okay, this is, I don't want to in 10 years really not be able to get up off the floor. Like, you only have so much time to enjoy life.
Right.
So,
That's true. And if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of others around you. I think that's so important.
Yeah, we see it. I mean, I see it daily with our 3 young boys, and they're so active. And you think, wow, I'm going to really have to step it up to keep up with these kids because
They're not slowing down.
they're not
either.
slowing down. They're getting stronger. They're getting faster. It's
I don't
takes a
see
lot to-
you slowing down as well, so I think you're fine.
I don't even remember a time having that much energy when I watch mine. I'm
Right.
like, how? I don't
Yeah.
think I ever had that much.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot.
So, Dr. Longo, how can listeners connect with you or learn more about Mariposa?
Oh, thank you. We are if you look up Mariposa Health and Wellness, that is our website for the wellness portion. We have a medical aesthetic website as well called My Mariposa Aesthetics, and we are downtown Ellensburg next to Guard, which is convenient for a lot of patients, and the Huntsman.
okay.
I know. So come see us. Healthy balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a pretty active Instagram account as well.
We do.
Okay.
I don't know what the handle is, but we're on Instagram. I think it might be Mariposa Medical Aesthetics.
We can find it
Yes.
and link it in the show
Yep.
notes for
Mhm.
sure.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and chatting with us. It was thoroughly entertaining and enlightening. So to our listeners, if you found this episode as engaging and insightful as we did, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Stay tuned for more remarkable stories of female scientists shaping the world of health and sports science. Thank you for tuning in.